The impact of racism and discrimination in housing on African Americanism and discrimination in housing have profoundly impacted African Americans, contributing to economic disparities, social inequalities, and generational poverty. Despite legislative advancements, systemic barriers persist, perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage. This essay explores the historical context, current manifestations, and potential solutions to address housing discrimination against African Americans in the United States. The roots of housing discrimination against African Americans can be traced back to the early 20th century, when practices like redlining and racially restrictive covenants were prevalent. Redlining, initiated by the Homeowners Loan Corporation (HOLC) in the 1930s, involved mapping neighborhoods and designating areas predominantly inhabited by African Americans as high risk for mortgage lending. This practice denied African Americans access to home loans and affordable housing, confining them to segregated, under-resourced neighborhoods. Additionally, racially restrictive covenants explicitly prohibited the sale of homes to African Americans in certain areas, further entrenching segregation. While explicit forms of housing discrimination have diminished, more covert practices continue to disadvantage African Americans. Studies reveal that African Americans face significant disparities in mortgage approval rates, homeownership rates, and housing quality. For instance, a 2020 report by the Urban Institute found that the mortgage denial rate for African American applicants was 16.1%, compared to 7% for white applicants. Additionally, African Americans are more likely to be steered towards subprime loans with higher interest rates, even when they qualify for prime loans. Another manifestation is the disparity in home values and appreciation. Homes in predominantly African American neighborhoods tend to be undervalued compared to those in predominantly white neighborhoods, leading to lower wealth accumulation for African American homeowners. This devaluation results from both historical disinvestment and ongoing bias in real estate appraisals. Rental discrimination also persists. African Americans often encounter discriminatory practices by landlords, including higher rent, more stringent application processes, and outright refusal to rent based on race. A 2018 study by the National Fair Housing Alliance found that African American renters experience discrimination in 48% of their interactions with rental housing providers. 1. Economic disparities. The disparities in homeownership rates and home values contribute to the racial wealth gap. Homeownership is a primary means of wealth accumulation in the United States, and the barriers faced by African Americans limit their ability to build and transfer wealth across generations. 2. Educational inequities. Housing discrimination often relegates African American families to neighborhoods with underfunded schools. The quality of education is closely tied to property taxes, which are lower in undervalued neighborhoods. This results in fewer resources, larger class sizes, and lower educational outcomes for African American children. 3. Health disparities. African American communities are more likely to be located in areas with poor housing conditions, including exposure to environmental hazards like lead and mold. These conditions contribute to higher rates of health issues such as asthma and lead poisoning among African American children. Some solutions to improving the housing crisis in the African American community include: 1. Strengthening legislation and enforcement. Existing laws like the Fair Housing Act need more robust enforcement. Enhancing the power and resources of agencies like the Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD) to investigate and penalize discriminatory practices is essential. 2. Incentivizing fair lending practices. Financial institutions should be incentivized to adopt fair lending practices. This could include tax breaks or other benefits for banks that demonstrate equitable lending and investing in historically marginalized communities. 3. Community reinvestment. Government and private sectors should invest in community development initiatives that focus on improving infrastructure, schools, and housing in African American neighborhoods. Programs like the Community Reinvestment Act (CRA) should be expanded and better enforced to ensure banks invest in these areas. 4. Affordable housing initiatives. Expanding affordable housing programs can help mitigate the impact of discrimination. This includes increasing funding for housing vouchers, developing affordable housing units, and implementing rent control measures to protect tenants from exorbitant rent increases. 5. Education and awareness. Public awareness campaigns and education about fair housing rights can empower African Americans to recognize and report discrimination. Organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance play a crucial role in this effort and should receive adequate support. 6. Equitable appraisal standards. Reforming the home appraisal process to eliminate biases that undervalue homes in African American neighborhoods is crucial. This could involve implementing standardized, transparent appraisal guidelines and increasing diversity within the appraisal profession. Racism and discrimination in housing remain significant barriers to equity for African Americans in the United States. Addressing this issue requires a multifaceted approach involving strengthened legislation, fair lending practices, community reinvestment, affordable housing initiatives, education, and appraisal reform. By tackling these systemic issues, the United States can move towards a more equitable society where all citizens have access to safe, affordable housing and the opportunity to build generational wealth. Racial inequalities in America's educational system and their impact on African Americans from kindergarten to college. Racial inequalities within America's educational system present profound challenges for African American students, beginning in kindergarten and extending through college. These disparities manifest in numerous ways, including access to resources, quality of instruction, school discipline policies, and post-secondary opportunities. The cumulative effect of these inequities not only undermines the academic and personal development of African American students, but also perpetuates broader societal disparities. Early education, kindergarten to elementary school. The journey of educational inequality often begins in early childhood education. African American children are more likely to attend underfunded and overcrowded schools. These schools often lack basic resources such as up-to-date textbooks, technology, and safe facilities. Additionally, access to high-quality per-school programs, which are crucial for early development, is limited for many African American families due to socioeconomic constraints and geographic disparities. The quality of instruction in these early years is another significant factor. Schools in predominantly African American neighborhoods often struggle to attract and retain experienced, highly qualified teachers. This results in larger class sizes and less individualized attention, which are critical during formative learning years. Research shows that students with effective teachers in the early grades are more likely to perform better academically and socially in the long term. Middle and high school. The widening gap as African American students progress to middle and high school, the disparities often widen. One of the most glaring issues is the achievement gap, reflected in standardized test scores, graduation rates, and college readiness. Schools with higher populations of African American students frequently have fewer advanced placement AP courses, honors classes, and extracurricular activities that can enhance college applications and provide a richer educational experience. Disciplinary practices also disproportionately affect African American students. They are more likely to face harsher punishments, such as suspensions and expulsions for similar infractions compared to their white peers. This phenomenon, known as the school-to-prison pipeline, disrupts education and increases the likelihood of future encounters with the criminal justice system. These punitive measures often arise from implicit biases and systemic racism within school policies and practices. Moreover, African American students often lack access to comprehensive guidance counseling that can assist with college preparation, scholarship opportunities, and career planning. This deficiency limits their ability to navigate the complex pathways to higher education and diminishes their prospects for post-secondary success. Higher education, college, and beyond. The transition to higher education presents additional challenges for African American students. The disparities in K-12 education often lead to lower college enrollment and completion rates. Financial barriers are a significant concern, as African American families typically have less generational wealth to support college expenses. Although financial aid and scholarships are available, African American students are more likely to rely on student loans, leading to higher debt burdens post-graduation. Once in college, African American students frequently encounter a lack of representation among faculty and administrators, which can impact their sense of belonging and support. Predominantly white institutions may not provide the culturally responsive education and resources needed to address the unique challenges faced by African American students. Additionally, instances of racial discrimination and microaggressions can create a hostile learning environment, further hindering academic achievement and personal well-being. Despite these challenges, historically black colleges and universities HBCUs have played a vital role in supporting African American students. HBCUs provide a culturally affirming environment, strong academic programs, and robust support systems. However, these institutions are often underfunded compared to predominantly white institutions, limiting their capacity to fully serve their student populations. Strategies for addressing educational inequality. Addressing racial inequalities in education requires comprehensive and sustained efforts across multiple levels. 1. Funding and resources. Equitably distribute funding to ensure all schools have access to quality resources, facilities, and technology. Invest in early childhood education programs, particularly in underserved communities. 2. Teacher training and recruitment. Implement policies to attract and retain qualified teachers in schools serving African American students. Provide ongoing professional development focused on cultural competency and anti-bias training. 3. Curriculum and instruction. Develop inclusive curricula that reflect the diverse histories and experiences of African American students. Expand access to advanced coursework and extracurricular activities in all schools. 4. Disciplinary policies. Reform disciplinary practices to reduce the disproportionate impact on African American students. Implement restorative justice practices that focus on conflict resolution and community building. 5. College access and support. Increase funding for scholarships and grants targeted at African American students. Enhance college counseling services in high schools, particularly those serving minority populations. 6. Supportive campus environments. Foster inclusive and supportive environments in higher education institutions. Increase the representation of African American faculty and staff. The impact of racial inequalities in America's educational system on African American students is profound and far-reaching. From kindergarten through college, these disparities hinder academic achievement, personal development, and long-term economic stability. By addressing these systemic issues through targeted policies, increased funding, and inclusive practices, we can create an educational system that truly offers equal opportunities for all students. Ensuring that African American students receive the support and resources they need to succeed is not only a matter of social justice but also essential for the prosperity and advancement of society as a whole. Health disparities and inequities in healthcare. Impact on African Americans and strategies for improvement. Health disparities and inequities in healthcare have long plagued African American communities in the United States, contributing to poorer health outcomes and reduced quality of life. These disparities stem from a complex interplay of social, economic, and structural factors that disproportionately affect African Americans across various health indicators. Addressing these disparities requires targeted strategies that address systemic barriers and promote equitable access to healthcare and resources. Understanding health disparities. African Americans experience disparities in numerous health outcomes compared to their white counterparts. Key areas of concern include: 1. Chronic conditions. African Americans are more likely to suffer from chronic illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. These conditions are often exacerbated by factors such as limited access to healthy foods, inadequate healthcare services, and higher levels of stress due to socioeconomic disadvantages. 2. Maternal and infant health. African American women are disproportionately affected by maternal mortality and morbidity rates. They are more likely to experience pregnancy-related complications and have higher rates of infant mortality compared to white women, even after accounting for socioeconomic factors. 3. Mental health. African Americans face significant disparities in mental health outcomes, including higher rates of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). Access to culturally competent mental health services is often limited, leading to underdiagnosis and inadequate treatment. 4. Cancer. African Americans experience disparities in cancer incidence, mortality, and survival rates across various types of cancer. Factors such as lack of access to preventive screenings, delays in diagnosis, and unequal treatment contribute to these disparities. Causes of health disparities. Several factors contribute to health disparities among African Americans. Socioeconomic factors, higher poverty rates, lower educational attainment, and limited access to employment opportunities contribute to poorer health outcomes. Access to healthcare. African Americans are more likely to be uninsured or underinsured, limiting their access to regular medical care and preventive services. Discrimination and bias. Racial discrimination in healthcare settings can lead to mistrust, reluctance to seek care, and disparities in treatment decisions. Social determinants of health. Factors such as neighborhood conditions, environmental exposures, and access to healthy food and safe physical environments significantly impact health outcomes. Strategies for improving health disparities and promoting health equity for African Americans requires a multifaceted approach that encompasses policy changes, community engagement, healthcare system reforms, and increased cultural competency among healthcare providers. 1. Policy and legislative actions. Expand Medicaid expansion, ensure broader eligibility for Medicaid, and promote enrollment among uninsured African Americans. Affordable Care Act ACA implementation. Strengthen and protect provisions of the ACA that improve access to healthcare services, including preventive care and mental health services. Health equity legislation. Implement policies that explicitly address health disparities and promote health equity across racial and ethnic groups. 2. Improving access to healthcare. Increase access to primary care. Expand community health centers and clinics in underserved African American communities. Telehealth expansion. Promote telehealth services to improve access to healthcare, particularly in rural and urban areas with limited medical facilities. Culturally competent care. Train healthcare providers in cultural competency to better understand and address the unique needs and preferences of African American patients. 3. Addressing social determinants of health. Invest in community development, improve housing quality, neighborhood safety, and access to recreational facilities and green spaces, nutrition and food security. Increase access to healthy foods through initiatives such as farmers markets, community gardens, and nutrition education programs. Education and employment opportunities. Support initiatives that promote educational attainment, job training, and economic empowerment in African American communities. 4. Promoting maternal and infant health. Support maternal health initiatives, expand access to prenatal care, doula services, and maternal mental health support for African American women. Reduce disparities in birth outcomes. Address implicit bias and structural racism in healthcare settings to improve maternal and infant health outcomes. 5. Mental health services. Expand mental health resources. Increase funding for mental health services in African American communities, including culturally competent counseling and therapy. Destigmatize mental health. Promote awareness and education to reduce stigma surrounding mental health issues within African American communities. 6. Data collection and research. Enhance data collection. Improve collection and analysis of health data disaggregated by race and ethnicity to monitor disparities and evaluate interventions. Community-driven research. Engage African American communities in research initiatives to ensure their perspectives and priorities are reflected in healthcare policies and practices. Addressing health disparities and inequities in healthcare for African Americans requires a concerted effort from policymakers, healthcare providers, community leaders, and individuals alike. By implementing targeted strategies that address the root causes of disparities, promote equitable access to healthcare services, and improve social determinants of health, we can work towards achieving health equity for all. It is imperative to prioritize and sustain efforts to eliminate systemic barriers and ensure that every individual, regardless of race or socioeconomic status, has the opportunity to live a healthy and fulfilling life. Addressing discrimination against African Americans in employment and entrepreneurship against African Americans in the realms of employment and entrepreneurship remains a significant barrier to achieving true equality and economic stability in the United States. This multifaceted issue manifests in various ways, including biased hiring practices, unequal opportunities for advancement, wage disparities, and limited access to capital for entrepreneurial endeavors. To combat these pervasive problems, it is essential to implement comprehensive strategies encompassing policy changes, corporate responsibility, community support, and rigorous monitoring. Discrimination in employment. One of the most glaring examples of discrimination in employment is the bias evident in hiring practices. Numerous studies have revealed that resumes bearing white-sounding names are more likely to receive callbacks than those with black-sounding names, even when qualifications are identical. This initial barrier is often compounded during the interview process, where implicit bias can lead to African American candidates being unfairly judged or subjected to inappropriate questioning. Promotion and advancement within companies also present significant challenges for African Americans. The glass ceiling effect is prevalent, with many African American employees being overlooked for promotions in favor of less qualified white colleagues. Performance evaluations, which play a crucial role in career progression, are frequently tainted by racial bias, resulting in unjustly negative assessments that hinder professional growth. Wage disparities further highlight the inequities faced by African Americans in the workplace. Despite performing the same work, African Americans typically earn less than their white counterparts across various industries and job levels. This persistent pay gap not only affects immediate financial stability, but also has long-term implications for wealth accumulation and economic mobility. Discrimination in entrepreneurial landscape is equally fraught with discrimination. African American entrepreneurs often struggle to secure the necessary capital to start and grow their businesses. They face higher denial rates for loans and, when approved, are subjected to higher interest rates compared to white entrepreneurs. The disparity in venture capital funding is also stark, with African American startups receiving a disproportionately small share of investment. Networking and mentorship are critical components of entrepreneurial success, yet many African American entrepreneurs lack access to influential networks that can provide valuable business opportunities, mentorship, and advice. Bias among potential mentors and investors further exacerbates this issue, as African American entrepreneurs are frequently overlooked or undervalued. Additionally, market opportunities are often limited for African American owned businesses. While some companies have implemented supplier diversity programs to promote inclusivity, these initiatives are typically limited in scope and impact, leaving African American businesses with fewer opportunities to secure contracts and grow their enterprises. Strategies for eliminating racist practices to address these issues and eliminate discriminatory practices. A multi-pronged approach is necessary, beginning with policy and legislative changes. Strengthening anti-discrimination laws and implementing more robust enforcement mechanisms are crucial steps in holding perpetrators accountable. Equal pay legislation must be enforced and expanded to address wage disparities and ensure fair compensation for all workers. Corporate responsibility also plays a pivotal role in eradicating discrimination. Companies should implement comprehensive diversity and inclusion training programs to address implicit bias and create more inclusive hiring and promotion practices. Transparent, standardized procedures for hiring and promotions can minimize bias and ensure fairness. Additionally, affirmative action programs should be strengthened and expanded to actively promote diversity within organizations. Support for African American entrepreneurs is equally vital. Increasing funding and support for programs that provide grants, low-interest loans, and venture capital to African American entrepreneurs can help level the playing field. Initiatives that connect African American entrepreneurs with mentors and professional networks are essential for fostering business growth and success. Expanding and enforcing supplier diversity programs can ensure that African American-owned businesses have fair access to contracts and opportunities. Community and educational support are foundational to long-term change. Providing greater access to business education and training programs focused on entrepreneurship and financial literacy can empower African American communities. Investing in community development programs that support economic growth and stability in predominantly African American neighborhoods can create a more conducive environment for business success. Finally, rigorous monitoring and accountability measures are necessary to sustain progress. Regular audits of company practices and policies related to hiring, promotion, pay, and supplier diversity can identify and address areas of bias. Requiring companies to publicly report on their diversity metrics and progress can increase transparency and accountability. Addressing discrimination against African Americans in employment and entrepreneurial situations requires a concerted effort from policymakers, corporations, and communities. By implementing comprehensive strategies that tackle bias at every level, from hiring practices to access to capital, we can create a more equitable and inclusive society. Only through sustained commitment and action can we dismantle the systemic barriers that hinder the economic advancement of African Americans and pave the way for true equality.